good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for coming today. Today, we're doing a workshop. So we're thinking about having probably two groups, and we've got a series of questions. And what we're thinking about doing is basically having you talk briefly about each question together, and then we'll give you our ideas. The workshop title, by the numbers, we really believe in setting very specific goals and looking at numbers in terms of planning and explaining the program to students and so on. But first of all, so we are teachers from Japan, first of all.
Yes, I'm Daniel Eichhorst, and as you can see, I'm not so young. Okay, and it turns out that I've been working in Japan for about 30 years now. The first 20 some years were really teaching a secondary level, junior high school and high school. The last 7 or 8 years have been in university. And as far as my experience with extensive reading, I want to describe that for you. I've been influenced by two people. One person is Ken Schmidt. His wife is with us here today, so I got to say good things about Ken. But he's a person that first introduced me to extensive reading and graded readers. I want to make a little distinction here. And as a result of Ken's influence, about 8 years ago, in junior high school, at the first year of junior high school, I was a homeroom teacher. And I taught this class of students 4 times a week. And there was a Japanese teacher who was interested in using graded readers, so we bought a bunch of graded readers and to put in the junior high school library. And I did try using them with my students. And you know what? I failed. Okay? And the reason I failed was that the books we got were too difficult. Okay? And I didn't really realize that at the time. Okay? Then we fast forward to about 4 years ago. I was in university at Tohoku. I'm at Tohoku University. We teach at Tohoku University in Japan. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Japanese system, Tohoku University is one of the former imperial universities. Okay, so relatively speaking, this would be about the 4th ranked university in Japan right now. Okay? Tokyo University, Kyoto University, and maybe Osaka University, and then Tohoku. It's a research institution. There are no English majors. Okay, and at Tokyo University, I met Mr. Ben Shearon, who I had previously known. But I observed him. He was kind of a one-man extensive reading show. Okay, and I'm quite a cautious person. You know, at this age, you know, there's a reason I've lived this long. And I watched him, and I saw what he was doing. I saw the response. I was aware of the potential of extensive reading. And so first I worked with Ben. I did one class. And then now I'm teaching last semester there were 5 classes of extensive reading, and we have worked together to develop an extensive reading program at Tohoku University.
So I've been a teacher for 13 years now, all in Japan, but I started with extensive reading when I was in high school, and I didn't realize it was extensive reading. So in French and German classes, our teachers asked us to read novels. So they weren't graded, they were much too difficult, but even with not the imperfect materials, I still got the ability boost, and more importantly, the motivation boost. And that really changed my foreign language studies. And fast forward to Japan, teaching in Japan, and I started trying extensive reading with students like that. And I remembered my own experience. I thought, okay, if I can give this to my students, hopefully it will transform their experience as well. I started off by myself, as Dan said, first carrying books in bags to class, and then later, I got a small little cart, so I push books to class. I was quite famous in the university. My cart had 10 boxes, and the other teachers were, who's this strange guy with his boxes? Now we have quite a large program. I'm really pleased to say that, mainly thanks to Dan's help. He's a logistics genius, so he's helped with the planning and the implementation. We now have how many teachers? 7 or 8 teachers?
Well, various semesters, yeah.
Yeah, 7 or 8 teachers, and we're teaching quite a considerable number of the students, 10%, 20% of the students. We're working with the library now. The library is very supportive, and if you go to this website, you can see information about our program. This is for the students, so it's got information about goals and word counts, especially, and so on.
I want to make one more comment here about why this appealed to me in university, because I think that there's a special context in Asia, and it might apply to other countries in the world, but because I worked for many years in the secondary level, junior high school, and high school, and I saw students studying English every year. You know, this is something that's talked about. How many years have you studied English? And I've developed kind of an approach, I guess, is that, you know, teachers need to be problem solvers about, you know, what we're giving the students. And what I saw when I moved from the secondary level to university was that my students in university, the first year students, they have progressed through the educational system. English is all about that entrance examination. Okay? I mean, this is typical. I think in Korea, Japan, I think it's fair to say China probably is similar. I don't really know about other countries very well, but I knew this about my students at Tokyo University in particular, this kind of elite group of students, but it goes across the board. So when students have passed the entrance exam, are they done with English? You know, I mean, in their mind they are, you know, and so the first semester of the first year of university is about your last chance to reboot the attitude of students towards English. And I was kind of desperately searching for ways to transform this entrance examination English study to practical kind of English study. And extensive reading really is one of those means. And I think we've really shown that. So when you consider doing extensive reading, if you aren't, or you know, the context is you know, really important, I think. Okay.
So what we're going to do today is we have a list of 8 questions that we're going to go through that we think are really important in terms of setting up and running extensive reading programs. What we'd like to do is make some groups, and for each question have you spend about 2 or 3 minutes, so a really short time. Just give your particular situation, any ideas you might have about the question, and then we'll talk about our ideas as well. At the end of the workshop, or if you have to leave early, we're going to distribute our teaching handbook, which is bilingual, English and Japanese, and the most recent student guide.
Please do. Okay.
And then at the end, we're hoping to have about 10, 15 minutes to answer questions, if you have any questions that haven't been answered so far. So, we've talked about this, so we'll skip that. Although, one thing we do, as Dan mentioned, we don't teach English majors. We teach all the students in the university, and we teach them their compulsory classes. So, I have nurses and engineers and Japanese language majors. And so we have to improve their English, even though it's not necessarily their fault.
Sorry.
Okay. Right, so let's make some groups. We're hoping groups of 3 or 4. So I think if you could work together, maybe come forward one.
Okay.
Yeah. Could you move
a group of 3 here. And can you, let's see, yeah, could you move up over there? Maybe, yeah, kind of. All right.
I'll go down. So, yeah, I'll go.
Okay.
Okay, so let's take about 2 minutes. Please introduce yourselves, your teaching context, and your experience of extensive reading. Again, really short, about 2 or 3 minutes.
My name is Erica, and I now teach high school students and student, but I'm just a school student, and I want to adopt some program about year into younger learners.
I'm very curious about this one because I'm trying to do this. I'm Shearon. I'm working at University in Japan. I teach cross-cultural communication.
Also, the extensive reading Sept publicity chair.
My name is Greg. I work at a medium-sized university in Thailand, and right now I'm learning more about extensive reading and to think of ways to apply that to extensive listening.
Yes.
You're all better now.
Yeah, the leg's better. I broke my ankle in March, motorbike accident. So last time I saw Shearon, I was hobbling around on crutches.
Especially the third one. So I use now I use every student reads the same title.
Read the same thing.
Yes,
Okay.
read the same title, and each semester my students read. Every year my student will read about 20 books.
Okay.
So I 20 books. 20
Yeah.
every month.
The extensive reading foundation website's a good one. And his book is really good too. I stole lots of ideas from him.
Ah, cool.
Good time today.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, so our first question. This might seem excessively simple, given that we're at the Extensive Reading World Congress. However, in practice, I do find that there's quite a wide range of what extensive reading actually is in schools. So just for a couple of minutes. So for you, what is extensive reading? What defines it? And how would you explain an extensive reading class?
So remember, define and explain. Okay. And this is not theoretically. Okay, this workshop is practical. Okay, so good luck. Tell us.
Hello. Would you like to join the...
Sorry. 잘못 알았나 봐,
She still wants that prize.
I think that usually
and explains that you do it also. So if the teacher is also doing extensive reading to learn a foreign language,
It's an attitude. We talked about it and identified what's going on. The storytelling that we read in the book is oral. So talking stories is important to them, reading stories is important to them. And that's not untrue in the United States as well. In many parts of the United States, we have to encourage students to read because what's the point? Reading is the nerds.
Anyway, the official extensive reading. Anyway, you should our students read
Otherwise, citizens whose attitudes towards education is poor in general, and the attitudes towards spiritual it's crazy.
It's not a big need. So ideally, it's best that like you don't need, but sometimes like if you see a word, maybe you can kind of half understand, but later you want to get a clear definition. So yeah, I can see. Right.
Yeah, that's a great idea. One of the sessions I was at was talking about test validity questions. So as you can tell, that makes all the difference. Students hear the word
People need a chance.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and then you ask them comprehension
They're not very
questions
good
about
at
stuff.
like defining, right? It's interesting. You go ahead and answer this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shall I chop people off? Are we ready?
Themselves in school, right? But you tell the kids.
Okay.
I guess we should have had a stopwatch and everything.
Tests, right?
Ah.
That's okay. You know, people don't get enough chance to discuss.
That's the balance, right?
I would suggest reading this first of all.
No.
No.
Because they don't have it. I mean,
Oh yeah.
They don't expect that. We don't.
Okay, can I stop you? I think we can probably do this all day, just about this one question. For us, from a program perspective, so we're always thinking about the program, hundreds of students, and how to set up the environment so that they succeed at reading. It's very different, I think, when you're working with one person or when you're working by yourself. But in terms of a program, for me, extensive reading has three kind of aspects. One is the extensive part. Students read a lot. And by a lot, I mean hundreds of thousands of words at least. It's got to be at the right level as well. There's no point in them reading stuff that's far too difficult. There doesn't tend to be too much reading stuff that's far too easy. That's not really a problem. It's the difficult side that's a problem. And the third one is that the student should not hate it. Enjoy is great, but just not hate it. I'll settle for that, So that's our definition of what extensive reading is. So based upon that, how can we create a program that pushes the students into reading as much as possible at the right level and without hating it? Because for me, one of the main goals of my program is that the students continue reading once the classes are finished. So the class is to train them, and hopefully at least some of them will choose to continue reading for the rest of their career and beyond, right? So after university and so on. So that's my main goal for the program. Our next question, this is quite a short one, I think. How would you classify or arrange readers or reading material even? So how would you classify it, sort it into levels, maybe set it up physically in the library? What system would you have, or do you have, if you already have classes? So let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, it's very interesting. People are coming from all different contexts. So I think this is a good opportunity to share your context and how you are making those decisions. So please.
I think for us, like, we don't have, we're not going to have.
Nice.
So tell me more about that because I'm still there's some longer texts like books, but we're focusing mostly on shorter articles, so they can online and everything's going to be online. So they'll be sorted like we have our own GABA levels, and they'll be for grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, so and they'll be sorted like that.
How many publishers, how many cities do you make it?
We haven't decided the part about the books yet, because we're focusing more on the articles. So and we're going to write just a lot. So every week there'll be new material, and it's like a news idea.
Your company develop your own material?
Exactly, yeah. So ideally we want to be making at least 3 articles a week for every level, so they can just have new current material. And then of course also we'll have books from publishers that they can use, but so it's going to be kind of mixed.
So writer writes or adapted.
Exactly, yeah. That's what my department's job is going to be, writing.
So what's your job?
It's writing.
Writing.
Yeah.
Anyway, you divide by grade leaders.
Sorry?
So anyway, you're a writer of grade leaders, right?
Well, we haven't started. We're textbook writers, and now we're transitioning into graded readers.
Ironically, at high school, so I don't put the books in the library. Instead, I occupy one room. I name it English room, and also the students use that room when they study math or in other subjects. But I ask the principal to use one room, and then I put all the graded readers and English readers according to the series.
So
and in the series, there's a level that accompanies.
So they're just like regular books, and they're not level for any particular program.
And also try to have the English class in that room, so they can see even if they don't take the accessibility class. And also I put each classroom, little bit and change. Okay, it's good. So that they can touch and see. They don't steal because that books are not so appealing at first. So it's not easy. I think that at my university we really have a place called English House. There are thousands of books there, and so we have many kinds of graded readers, Oxford series, Macmillan's English, what else? Cambridge English readers, and then they all organized according to they reclassify it for us. But I have my own books. This is for students in general. But I have in my office I have about 2,000, 3,000 books that I use as class text, and so I use that as teaching. So normally I have to read all the books, and then I'll choose some interesting ones. And then so as I previously said, in the beginning it was not very successful, but later on, now all the books I use are very interesting. And then, however, I think that the classification according to the publisher are not very accurate. For example, recently I tried to give students a delay post test. It shows it's level 3, but I use data and I analyze the text by using software, and it turned out to be even lower than the level 2 level. So which made me a little bit frustrated because I really need to choose a higher level test to for my delay post test. So I think that mainly the teacher have to read a lot. So we will know which books will appeal to the students and which one is we can rely on the publishers.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
There's a series of
You said you have
in Japan called the Matter series, where there's a bunch of traditional stories. And we find our students really like those. They know the story.
The students told me to keep it. So I ignored their advice.
I'm just going to go on the book jacket because
It's what you said before. It's from students.
this book is good for first graders.
Oh, do you want to grab the other side?
They're so strong that
Yeah. Yeah, this is not solid. It's not attached. So.
It's got to go like where's that go?
That goes in there. Okay. Okay, so right, I think in terms of classification, it's quite easy to make it too complicated. The most important thing for a program is that the students and the teachers understand the levels, right? So I've seen programs that have 20 levels of difficulty. And for us, that's far too much. We don't need that kind of fine detail. The other problem is that the measures that we're working off, head counts from the publishers, then they're not the full story. So there's things like how complex the story is that makes it more difficult or easier. There's things like the context or the cultural references. Some stories are much easier for Japanese students, some stories are much more difficult, and so on. So we can't take all of that into account at the moment. So for our program, we created 5 levels, basically. And they're color-based. They're explained in the handbook, so don't worry about writing anything down. You can read about it later. But basically, we start off from a low level, about 300 head words, and that's our first level. And we level up until the final level's the kind of 2,500, 3,000 head word level. And we encourage our students to go through those levels. It's based on the Extensive Reading Foundation scale. Does everyone know the website for that? Basically, if you go to the Extensive Reading Foundation website, they have 5 broad levels, and then each level is divided into 3. So there's 15 or maybe 20. They put some more on the end. Basically, there's a wide range here. We just use the 5 broad ones for our program. So we have our 5 levels. We don't arrange the books by genre. You know, like romance and non-fiction and so on. We haven't done that. But for us, a really big breakthrough was when we asked the library not to sort the books by series, but by level. So originally the library said, okay, we're going to put all the Oxford books here, the easy ones at one end and the difficult ones at the other end. And we said, okay, no, please put all the red books on one shelf, all the orange books on one shelf, and so on. And that really made a big difference in terms of the students being able to find what they're looking for. And also to browse more as well. Another thing, we take books to class as well as have books in the library. I think that's quite important. Although recently we've been trying to reduce the books in class because we don't want to be dealing with it and forcing the students to go to the library. And if you do that, then the library will like you and give you more money because you're boosting their numbers. The more numbers they have, the more their budget's going to be protected. So you get a real synergy going with the library if this works. Okay. Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think this relationship to the library, okay, so at the level we're working, it's a program. And, you know, you can believe in extensive reading, but you have to understand how the political nature of getting people to cooperate, okay? And this is where collaborating together, we've managed to do this, I think. And once you get some advocates in administration and the library, this kind of program can really take off. So the only thing I say about these levels now, we've been successful getting the library to divide these. We still have one thing we have to manually do. We are the two people that put the colored stickers on the books. Okay? And this is not a small thing, I'll tell you. Okay? All of these program elements, they take time. Okay? And so Ben and I, there was a period where every week, you know, at the same time, we'd go over to the library and put stickers on the books. Okay? And you just have to build that into your schedule. But you know, these are all little things, but they're significant when the numbers get big, okay?
20,000 books and counting, right?
But you know what? That's about the last thing. That's the last thing we're responsible for right now. And I think that's a huge step forward, basically.
All right. So we set targets for our students. I think that's very important, to set expectations. So I find expectations tend to be too low with regards to English in Japan. So we have targets, and we'll explain how they're calculated in a moment. But before that, if you have a program, how do you set reading targets? Do you set reading targets? And if you don't, then where do you think the targets should be for your students? So again, if we take about...
So get your calculator out and demonstrate to us, you know, how you do this, okay?
Yeah, show your work. Oh yeah, this is a double. This is a work. It's a 90-minute workshop.
Okay.
Phew. You have 5 minutes left. I was like, what? Until halfway, because it's a double.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
10 months. Well, it depends on the person's 200 words is good enough or short enough or more. Well, it depends on the person.
Do most students meet the target?
If they take the elective course, but the normal students take only once a week compression class. I said 100,000 words for 30 years.
I like these kind of numbers. This is exactly what I'm talking about. I like this. Oh, you okay?
How long is one?
Our numbers are much smaller.
But it's adapting, right?
And then, so in order to reach that target, they have to be outside of the course.
Yeah.
Based on their reading outside of six.
I'm glad you like this book. Okay. Yeah, no, it's an idea. Well, no, it's you know, in the context of school, would be for a semester or a quarter, or you know, in other words, to get a grade, right? Yeah. So if you're going to give a grade A, for example, how many words would you expect the student to read? B, C, and then, but the key is how do you decide those? Okay? You know, I mean, can you explain it? But she brought up what the kind of approach we take with it.
In the event the student didn't finish a book, partway through, and I got my 500 pages.
Isn't that interesting that you can kind of tell that to students, right? Yeah. I mean, it really changed their attitude. Interesting. Okay, so you're planning now, huh?
I have to design my own training program.
Well, you're lucky because you're going to get this at the end of this and this could be you might send us a thank you note, actually. I don't know. Why should we do this?
Okay. Right, the next part involves numbers. So I'm going to let Daniel explain the nitty-gritty. Before that, though, I just want to talk very briefly about the evolution we had in terms of targets. I started off using books as the unit. So I said, okay, I want you to read X number of books. You can imagine the problem with that. I had a considerable subsection of students that immediately tried to find the shortest book possible, right? Which is kind of counterproductive, I think. Then we moved on to pages. And same thing, right? Does the book have pictures? How big's the font? And so on. It didn't seem like a fair measure. And we ended up settling on word counts. So how many words are in the book? Most publishers are kind enough to print that on the book now. Some don't. I'm fighting with a few publishers, trying to get them to cooperate. You can find the information online if you really need to. So another part of our job is writing the word counts into the books that don't have them. Right? But in terms of our targets, I'll let Daniel explain this.
I think this is a complete system issue. Okay, it's a complete system issue, and it can be adapted to any level of school. Okay? And the context we are working within right now at Tokyo University, we have two 15-week semesters. Students are required to take a reading class each semester of the first year. And what this means generally in terms of actual time is 15 class. If you have 15 classes in the semester, the first class is to say hello and to explain the syllabus and introduce extensive reading.
Hi there.
If you can get
joining the
students
group over there?
immediately reading,
Make a group of 4.
okay, the first week, this means you could have students reporting about extensive reading 14 times. Okay? And these are the kind of things you have to think about.
That's
okay?
next.
Now,
That's at 2:40.
So we have 14 reporting weeks.
Oh,
Then,
well, I mean,
one of the things that
that's in an hour,
surprised
right?
me about Japanese universities is the number of classes they have. Okay? This is really very similar to high school in terms of their schedule. Okay? And the Ministry of Education actually has guidelines in Japan for the amount of time that you can expect students to work for your course outside of class. Okay, and roughly you have to think 1 credit or 1 hour. Okay, roughly. All right. So what I have each week with my students is I have 90 minutes of class, and a reasonable expectation is 60 minutes outside of class. Okay, everybody's following me here, right? It's so the numbers, all right? Now, within that 90 minutes of a class period, we think extensive reading is so important that students should be reading in class silently for roughly 45 minutes. Okay, roughly 45 minutes, all right? So, here we have 45 minutes of in-class reading. And oh yes, yeah, I can start here. I actually have now. You don't have to take any notes here. Okay, we have the kind of the handy dandy chart here. Okay, but here let me just so I don't. So, 45 minutes of in-class time. Okay. Then we have this 1 hour of, I would say, an average student, but I want students who are below average to be able to pass. Okay, this is really important. Okay, these are not English majors. English is not life or death for many of them. Okay, at the same time, our university, these students are quite motivated. Okay, so English is not a hard sell. Okay, it's a little thing here, but I'm going to say that my student, my least motivated student, will only study 25 minutes outside of class. Okay. Okay? So, 45 plus 25, that gives me 70 minutes. Okay? It's kind of interesting because Paul Nation's talk this morning, this is pretty good actually, okay? 70 minutes a week, okay? Now, the next factor is reading speed. Reading speed. Right? Now, it's interesting. Today, Paul Nation mentioned 150 words per minute as a moderate reading speed. I'm not interested in setting the low goal as a moderate level. I want to go down. Okay? I want to go down. Okay? So, I'm going to say 100 words per minute. Okay? 100. Everybody following me here so far? Okay. Okay. Now, can somebody tell me, what is 70 times 100? 7,000. I'm pretty good here so far. Okay. How many weeks reporting? 14. So far, so good. Okay. 14 weeks. What's that total going to be?
680,000.
Well, it's going to be 70,000 plus 28,000. In other words, it's 100,000. Right? Pretty close, all right? So if you take this lowest reading speed, and for our students, 100, I would say, would be a slow reading speed, okay? Take into account this number of weeks, okay? The engaged time, extensive reading, and this actually, in class, right? So this is pretty much guaranteed. Okay? In this way, we have logically, in a way that the students can easily comprehend, we can explain our lowest goal. All right? Now, these factors then all change here, right? Motivated students or average students might spend 60 minutes a week, okay? 60 minutes a week. And if we do the same way, the same speed here, okay, I'm just going to start putting a couple numbers up here. This goes up to 157,000 words if you are willing to put in an hour, okay? So we just keep going in this way, and we set reading goals. Now, the upper limit, okay, that's the one I want to show you. And the upper limit, now we're going to change here. When we set the upper limit, we're not using this, okay? This is to set the lower limit, okay? To set the upper limit, we shifted this number to 130, okay? 130, and that still isn't a huge increase, all right? An upper limit here, 130 words per minute. We would expect students to spend about 2.5 hours, okay, outside of class reading, all right? And based on this, the number would be about 380,000 and above there, okay? So, the key idea here is the concept, okay? The factors, how much time are you willing to spend in class? How much time do you expect students to use out of class? Okay? And then, how do you judge your students' reading speed? Okay? Using these variables, you can set very reasonable, explainable goals for your students. And this is the way we do it. Okay? Yeah. Ben, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah. One fairly unique feature of our system is we force all the students to start with the lowest level books. We do this because the students have spent a lot of time preparing for tests. So they're quite good at dealing with short, difficult passages. But we find that they don't have the stamina to read longer things in English. Also, their reading speed's quite low. So to address both of those, we force them to read the earliest, the lowest level books and until they reach a certain goal, and then they level up to the next level. This gives them lots of fluency practice at the bottom. They start off reading things that are far too easy. However, the good students level up really quickly. So it doesn't really hold them back too much. And for the weaker students, it gives them a chance to catch up in terms of fluency and so on. I think this is really one of the key aspects of our program, forcing all the students to start with the starter level books. Of course, the best students finish them within a week, and so on. Again, you can read about the specific numbers later on. Right, our next question is, what do students do in a reading class? So, we've already mentioned 45 minutes of reading. However, what do they do? For us, that's half the class. So half the class is spent reading. So what else could we do in the class? Or what do you do in your reading classes?
Yeah, let's please talk again. I tell you what, could you two move over here? Then we'll have 4 here. Okay, I hate to ask you to do that moving here, but yeah, thank you. And then you're going to be 4 again.
Oh, sorry, we're going to have to speed up a little bit to make sure we get through everything. Would you like to deal with this one?
Yeah. This question, I'll keep the answer quite simple. Okay. In our case, we have 90-minute classes. As I said, the first 45 minutes are not necessarily the first, 45 minutes are spent doing silent reading. 15 minutes are spent doing timed reading. Okay, and this again, students are doing independently. Okay, and then the other 30 minutes are really up to it's kind of at the discretion of the teacher. Okay, in the case of native speaker teachers, usually we do speaking or listening activities about the book. Okay, we've been very fortunate. We have a couple Japanese teachers now trying this, and they take a little different approach. They've done more like vocabulary kind of study, okay? And so we really want to see this extensive reading expand, to the, in our case, the Japanese faculty. And so, but these are fundamentally the 3 parts: the extensive reading, timed reading, and then supplementary activities. Okay? And so these are the 3 sections. Mm-hmm.
All right. So how do students report what they've done. So we've set these goals, these word count goals, or whatever goals you've set for your program. How do the students then report this to the teachers?
Go ahead. Okay, we've got to speed up here now. Okay, talk about your reporting. Okay.
Is what you want them to report on, or the report is about like the book that they've read?
Well, I mean, what data do you collect from the student? Okay. And that includes your book reports and numbers. Okay, so all of it. Yeah.
Okay, so in that case, yeah, reading aloud.
But I want to do
And I think the next one is students' grade after this.
Oh, this is my favorite one.
You can have that one.
She actually calculates the stars each week for the class and say these are the books that got 5 stars.
The stars were for even university students?
Yeah, because that way the students see the list. Very old, and then they go, oh,
So the mistake is incidentally, it means that they have.
I want to do something.
Encourage the students to read. And what we've ended up with, we've been developing these forms for a while. We have the students report which books they've read and also add up the word counts. And they hand those in each week. So we collect that each week, we put it into an Excel sheet. It builds up the student's grade. We also ask them to write short book reports for books of the second level and up. The easiest books, they're too short, we don't bother with book reports. But once we get to kind of bookworms 2 kind of level, that's our orange books, they're kind of 4,000, 5,000 words. We ask them to write a brief report about what it's about. And that's it.
The thing about these book reports is we give them a score. We do not correct any of the English. Okay? But one thing we do is we scan them all. Okay? This is, again, a system thing, but it's surprisingly important in case you get students who get creative and show their friend the book report. Okay? This awareness, we'll come to this again, but that's one thing when we process, how we process these, we describe this in the manual. Okay? And this is very important, actually.
Actually, that's a good point, because the scanning allows us to give them back the next week. So the students get very quick feedback, and they get a score for their word count. We tell them this is your score for this week in terms of the amount of reading you've done, and they also get a score for the book reports. So it's very quick feedback, and the students that were performing at a substandard level very quickly adjust because they realize what the targets are, and they see that most people are meeting them. So that's quite important for us. Okay. So how do you grade your students?
Am I allowed to ask a question?
We certainly won't stop you.
Because I really like students writing a book report. However, I found that the difficulty I encounter is that if I ask students to read classic readers, it's very easy to find the brief summary online. So students do not have to read a book. They can just go on the line and check the summary. So how? This is my pen.
Right, we're going to talk about that on the next question, I think. So if we can come back to you there, is that okay? Right. So how do you assign grades to students in your reading classes or in your reading program?
Okay.
That's our next discussion. Yes.
Do you know her? Okay. Okay. Right. Thank you.
Well, I'm wondering for you that if you
some parents because of the kind of problem, the parent pressure, and in other cases, if the students to peer evaluation, so actually the partner the work and
Okay, this is part of the teaching job, assigning a grade. Okay? And we try to make this as comprehensible for the students as possible. Okay? There are 5 factors that determine a student's grade in our case. Number 1, total word count for the semester. Okay? Number 2, average weekly score for the semester. In other words, if a student thinks that they're going to get the top grade by submitting massive word counts in 2 weeks, they're going to be sadly disappointed. Okay, so we ensure that this is an effort to develop a reading habit. We have this called a lifelong reading habit, and so you have to institutionalize that thinking. Okay, and so we have this average weekly score. Next, total book report points. Okay? Total book report points. Okay? Finally, completion of timed reading exercises and participation in speaking listening activities. Okay? This is basically show up and be positive. Okay? And that's good enough in this case. Okay? Finally, attendance. Okay? Attendance. Right? So these are the 5 elements. Right? Then what we do to help students plan, okay? And you know, your students, they do need to plan actually, okay? And we have clearly identified what should a student do to get a AA grade. In our case, that's the top grade, okay? The next group we want to serve respectively, what is the minimum required to get credit with a C grade? Okay, I think, you know, we do not have to. These are adults, okay? Make a decision, okay? And we want to clearly identify, okay? And then students can determine between those, all right? And so that's our approach to it. That's our approach. Now, if you're curious, what does it really take to get that top grade? Achieve a total word count of at least 400,000 words, okay? Finish the red level in the first week and read 25,000 words a week or more to attain a weekly score of 5.0 each week. Submit high-quality book reports each week and get at least 90% of the book report points possible. Complete all of the timed reading exercises and participate positively in the speaking listening activities. Attend all of the classes, you know? And unbelievably, we get a lot of students to do this. Okay, this is really exciting. Really exciting. Okay. All right.
All right. So we mentioned supplementary activities briefly. So what kind of things can we do in class other than reading? That's what supplementary activities are for us. So we've got the silent reading, we've got the timed reading, and then other. And let's keep it really brief. If each person could just mention one idea, something that works well.
About this a bit, as I've heard. Okay, so just, we're going to give you 1 minute, 30 seconds. Right, go ahead. Okay.
I want to try reading.
Then why don't you? Are you satisfied so far?
Yeah, very. And I think the time is perfect. We're going to finish. Right, I'm going to talk about introducing books to each other and doing listening activities based on the books and the choose your own adventure stuff.
Yeah, I think so. That's good. That's good. Okay.
Okay, so as promised, 1.5 minutes. I'm going to introduce 3 activities that I think are quite beneficial, give you good bang for the buck, as it were. The first one is having students introduce a book they've read that week to each other. We have them work in pairs, we randomize it if we can, and we have them do that 2 or 3 times. Because by the 3rd time, they're much more fluent at introducing that specific book. Also, because they're introducing a book, they have to use vocabulary from the book. That recycles it. And the 3rd thing is that students can introduce books they like to each other, which is going to encourage the student who's listening to maybe read that book. And it's also social proof. It shows that students are reading. So for the students that might be inclined not to read, it kind of encourages them to read. Now, this is a bit dangerous because if most of the students aren't reading, this is going to give social proof in the other direction. So you have to be quite careful with this. If most of the students are participating, this will encourage the remaining ones to continue.
And we have a model for doing this. Okay. Again, it's very important not to just think they can do it. We give them a model of how to introduce a book.
So what we expect, basically. The second thing is using the audio from the books. So I like to show using the CDs that come with the readers and show them that, in my experience, just listening is more difficult. Right? It makes it about one level more difficult. So if you don't have the text, if you're just listening to the CD, this is more difficult than reading. However, reading and listening at the same time makes it easier. So you can do more difficult texts if you have the CD at the same time. And just experiment and show them what is available, because we've got the CDs in the library as well. Have them do short, not too long, obviously, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and maybe work together to try and figure out what was done, what was said in the audio. And the third thing is, do you know the choose your own adventure books? Using these as a group activity in class has been really interesting for us. The students tend to enjoy the activity. And basically, we'll give 1 book to 3 students. And so 1 student will read the page, tell them the choices, and they'll decide together as a group. It takes about 30 minutes, but it's a really interesting activity. And you can have them all using the same book, or you can have a collection and have them choose the book to use that week. So those are my 3 supplementary activities. And the last topic we're going to talk about for about 5 minutes, this is going to end today's formal presentation, is this. How can we prevent cheating?
We didn't forget you. So please, how can you do this? Okay, discuss this in your group, and then we'll give you our magic answers here. That's a great thing. Excuse me. This is kind of the key thing about the extensive reading program, and the type we've developed at least is trust with the student, right? Okay, yeah, this program, we're giving students huge autonomy choosing books, reporting their own data, no tests really, right? I mean, but we treat these university students, these are adults, okay? And so this is I think this is an adult approach actually, okay? But that said, we have tried to build in multiple safeguards here, okay? And the first thing in our case, we tell students.
Sorry, can I?
Yes.
I think, and basically, the most important thing for us is that we've made it not worth it to cheat, because it's the consequences are catastrophic, and the benefits are marginal. So for most students, if they add up the chance of getting a slightly better grade against failing automatically, it tends to go in the doing it properly kind of.
And so what does this catastrophic mean? I want to just explain it. If we catch a student cheating, they fail. They lose credit for the course. Okay? And it's not enough, though, to tell them this one time. Okay? Students have an amazing ability to forget. Okay? And so how do we do this? All right? Each week when they submit their data, and we call this the weekly record, we have one little box on this weekly record that says, this data is accurate. And we have them sign their name. No, you can laugh, but this is a way to reinforce every week to think about this and understand the risk. Okay? We have another form. We call it the pledge for reporting data. Okay? This is a big form. Okay? At the start of class, it's big. It's one page, and it's big letters. Okay? It says, I understand if I submit false information, I will fail this course. They sign their name, and this is Japan, so I put the big stamp on it. Okay? And it's just wonderful. They come up one by one. I say, do you understand? They say yes, and I stamp it. It's the impact of this stamp. This is culture. I don't know about Korea, okay? But Japan has this wonderful stamping culture, okay? That's one thing. The other thing is we do ask students to submit their timed reading speeds, right? Okay? Now, we don't really look at these very much, but I can always, if I want, and I do it on occasion, if I get a student submitting a big word count, and I'm thinking, I've been watching you. I think this word count is a little questionable. Also on this forum, we ask them to submit how much time did you spend reading, okay? And then I'll go look at their timed reading speed, and I'll say, well, this student was reading 100 words a minute, submitted 50,000 words this week in 2 hours. This really doesn't add up, okay? And then I will talk to the student. There's a process here, okay? And this is, again, a kind of a check, okay? The book reports, you mentioned the book reports, okay? We have specific instructions that if you copy a book report from Google or any other source, you fail, okay? And it's amazing how easy it is to identify these kind of book reports, right? I mean, these sentences are just too beautiful, okay? And so that's one thing. And then finally, observing students, right? I mean, during class period, we don't have our head down. We try to observe students, and you see their actions, and then talking to students, about books. And so we can randomly call students forward and talk to them. And you don't have to do it all the time, but and you can really shock them if you call the same student, 2 weeks in a row or something, right? And that'll totally throw off the scheduling, But anyways, you have to do this weekly, really, to reinforce the penalty. And through doing this, we've had, very good results. Very good. It's not perfect. We have had kids fail. Okay? And we have an approach with that. I think it's worth stating. If a student is caught doing one of these things, we tell them you fail. At the same time, we tell them, we hope you will continue coming to class to read. Okay? Okay? And what's very interesting, you do get two distinct types of students. There's the student who just stopped and said, I failed. But then there's a student, now again, this is the context of Japan. They're with this group of students. They don't want the other students to know they failed. So they keep coming. And what we will do, because we are kind, heartful teachers, if they will continue coming a couple weeks, then we will pull them aside and talk to them again and say, if you continue to read like this and meet this goal, you can get a passing C. Okay? And I think that's a reasonable, I mean, that's kind of a reasonable approach. So this is the approach we developed, and I think we're quite pleased with it. Ben, do you have anything to add?
Nope, that's perfect.
Okay, so we kind of detail this, these forms even in this manual. So this is, does that kind of answer your question?
Yes.
Yes.
But one thing is the student may ask within the research.
Let me pass this out. This is the new program.
Thank you. I can borrow one. That's another way of cheating. Because if a lot of students find some summary from Google, and then it's easy to find out because we just compared it, right?
Right.
But if I ask a student, then that's difficult, I think.
I've read it along with English. I've just read the book.
One more.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, this just so you understand what we've given you now, this is a book that was published through our university, and this is more like a teaching guide. Okay, this isn't an academic treatise. We are very practical people here. Now, what's interesting, this manual is kind of the
Evolution.
Okay, so this is actually what we use. Okay,
Yeah.
this is what we give to the students at the start of the course. Okay.
So as a timeline, this was written last year in November, December. It was published in April. And this is the guide we're going to give students next month when we start the new semester. So you can see the changes here, how we've progressed the program. But this explains a lot of the thinking that went into what we do. And that's it. Right, this workshop is scheduled to finish at 2:35. So we have about 6 or 7 minutes if you have any questions, or if you want to run out and get some coffee, or anything like that. So any questions that we haven't covered so far?
If I start a small English library for young learners, how many books would you recommend to start?
At the minimum, as
At the maximum?
that's what's your budget? You know, how much money do you have to buy books? What's the goal? How much time you're going to spend? In general, if you're going to be reading in class, you need at least one book for every student. That's the bare minimum, I think. You probably want an extra few for when students finish to change around. Beyond that, as many as you can get. We have 20,000 books, but we don't have enough. So, but at the very minimum, one book per student plus an extra couple, so they can exchange them.
Yes, it's very interesting. I think your program is really very successful, and you are diligent and conscientious teachers. But I really want to know how much time you spend on these, because if you teach at the university, you are supposed to do research as well. That takes a lot of time. So if you run this, and then how many hours per week do you think you will spend on students?
The nice thing about this program is that we spent an incredible amount of time creating it and thinking about it and developing worksheets. Like the worksheets you'll see in this guide are the 10th version, right? We've gone through multiple versions. For the other teachers that teach these extensive reading classes alongside us, they really have almost no preparation time. It's a turnkey program. You can pick up the guide, you can get your books, and you can just run the class. There's a minimal amount of checking each week. Teachers can do most of their paperwork in the class while the students are reading. Say 15 to 30 minutes a week per class in terms of checking and scanning and so on.
Yeah, 15 to 30.
So it's a minimal time commitment for teachers. For the program coordinators, it's quite a lot of work. Well, how?
No, that's
Yeah.
right. It's the process of determining the system that will work for your university. But now our intention is that we're able to give new teachers this manual. And the thing you have to be careful about with our situation is that teachers can think this is too easy. Okay, they have to believe in extensive reading. Okay, and so that we're able to give this them, and outside of class, 15 to 30 minutes should pretty much cover the amount of time that is necessary
To run the class.
to process these papers. Okay, and this is quite a small time commitment, I think, in terms of a class. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm just curious
Yeah.
because sometimes I ask my student to do book report to me, and then it takes one student may take 5 minutes. So if I have 10 students,
when we process book reports, one student takes 30 seconds.
wow.
Yeah, you just look at the length. We don't check.
We don't check the detailed content or make any corrections. No, the point is the reading. The book report is only a demonstration that they read it. Okay, but as you mentioned, you can get students copying, but we can pretty much see that in the first sentence. So yeah, this is more like scanning in terms of reading, the way we process these. Mm-hmm. So one student, and what we're talking about classes of 40 students, 15 to 20 minutes for the class. Yeah, 15 30 minutes. Yeah. Yeah.
Some students here in Korea, some university students, they want to receive feedback of what they've read.
We also have that. We have some students who say, please check my English, please check. And we say, I'm really sorry, this is not a writing class. We have 40 students. I have 260 students who are doing this program in my classes, and that's not possible. So it's just part of the course. We can't give written feedback on that. Occasionally, if I read it and I like what they say, I might write a comment. But I won't go through and check their English. I mean, it's just not possible.
Yeah, you just have to set the policy, and I think it's reasonable. Yeah, anybody else or?
All right.
Well, I think you have 5 minutes. We give you a 5-minute gift. Thank you for your positive participation, and thank you very much. Really good.
Thank you.